Grace and peace, everyone. This is Malik, your addiction recovery coach, coming back at you, giving you the real in recovery. And today, this is episode 5 of the Freedom from Addiction podcast. And I'm just so excited to have a special guest, a mentor, national speaker, now an author of his book that we'll be talking about, The Miracle, a brother in Christ and a friend, James LeBlanc. So I'm just so happy that he was able to come out. And the topic we're going to be talking about today is letting go of resentments and unforgiveness, and how that played such a big part of James's story, being able to do that. And also in his book, The Miracle, which is just an awesome book. I read the whole book, and we're going to be discussing some things in there. So before I before we get started, James, I wanted to say, do you want to add anything? Do you have your book right there so people can take a look at it? And if you can, put something in the chat, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end to give you that opportunity. Do you have your book right there?
Always have it on hand, man.
Yeah.
Always have my book. I drive around, it's in my car. It's called The Miracle by James M. LeBlanc. It is available wherever you buy books. It's available in audio, on paperback, and Kindle. So any way you want to read it or listen to it, it's available. So yeah, thanks for letting me plug it. The Miracle, James LeBlanc.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, before we dive right in, James, I would like to if you could just share a little bit about your story and your journey. I know you grew up pretty much in California and then moved back to the DMV. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how you ended up, just a brief overview before we get into some questions and discussions.
Sure. Yeah, I was born in San Francisco, California, and so I always thought that my journey started there. Obviously, that's where I was born, but I found out later that I was conceived in Washington, D.C., and I had no idea. And so it's funny how I wandered back to my origins, later on in life, and later found out that's where I was actually conceived. So I was born an orphan, so that's why I didn't know the backstory. I was born an orphan. The good news was I was adopted immediately, and I was raised in Berkeley, California, which is in the Bay Area. It's right next to Oakland, and um, and that was the good news. The bad news was my parents divorced when I was 7, and the house disintegrated into chaos and violence and abuse. And my mom, God rest her soul, she died in 2011, but we had a good relationship by then. Things got greater later, as they say, but for those years after the divorce, it was a real tough scene in our home. Plus, we were super poor, so we were on food stamps and going to bed hungry and stuff. So my brother, just to give you a little, because my thing, you mentioned it, you touched on it, is always about releasing resentments and unforgiveness, because I lived on resentments for a long time, and when we were growing up like that, my older brother would run away a lot. That's how he kind of responded to the abuse that was going on. And Child Protective Services came and did an investigation, and as a result, they removed Chris from the house when he was 12 years old. He never came back, and so he was 12 and I was 10 when my big brother was ripped out of our home, and he went to foster care. And I mentioned that. I always mention that because that was like the last straw for me as a child. First, my dad left. First, I was given away at birth. That was first, and then my dad left, and then we were abused. Then my brother got ripped out of our home. So I was like, man, I like I get it. It doesn't pay to love, connect, or be vulnerable, because the people you love are either gonna leave or they're gonna hurt you. So that's when I just turned off my emotions, and I was very resentful about everything for a long time.
Wow. So that would you say that was the is that when alcohol and drugs came into play to kind of deal with that pain and deal with those emotions?
Definitely. So that I always sought escape, and initially it was through reading. I read a lot. I was an avid, like I would just eat books up because I found out one thing my parents did do was teach us how to read early, and I found out you can escape to a whole different world through books. And then through athletics, I go down the playground, and that was my refuge, the playground. I'll just run out the house every chance I got, go to the playground all day, and I only come home because I had to. And and then when I was big and bad enough, or so I thought,
Hmm.
14, probably around 14, freshman year of high school, I started daily using drugs, daily weed, started smoking weed every day, drinking every chance I got. And this is the 80s in Berkeley, California. So there's a lot of drugs, a lot of different drugs, acid, shrooms, coke. Like there was just, I mean, it was plentiful. So yeah, so that's I thought that that was my escape. But it's funny, Malik, and I tell people this, man. Like some people, like I don't know. It's like their refuge. But I always knew, it's weird. I always knew that I shouldn't be doing it. Like it wasn't me. You know what I mean? Like even when I was getting high and trying to be in that crowd, I always knew this wasn't, this wasn't me. But I kept trying because reality was, you know, I didn't want to deal with reality at all. So that's how I thought I could escape. Yeah.
Wow. I could definitely relate to that, James. Like for me, it was the same type of deal, man. Like coming out of middle school, like getting bullied all through middle school, and then coming into high school, and that's when my drinking, alcohol, and I didn't really start smoking weed until like after high school, but I did start drinking, smoking cigarettes, and gambling. And I remember that same feeling that you're talking about, like this isn't really me, but
Mm-hmm.
I was so pressed, I guess I could say, to be accepted because that validated and to be with the in crowd and trying to be popular. And I'm sure with some insecurities and fear and things like that I was trying to escape. So that
Yeah.
alcohol was the thing for me. So did you do all of those things like in high school, like the shrooms, the acid, and you did
Yeah.
coke and everything?
Yeah, it was a little different out there, man, because it was it was like we were Gen X, so we were all latchkey kids, and we just were out, in the city, just running around all day, and we were exposed to a lot of things we probably shouldn't be exposed to. I mean, I have two sons now, and I couldn't even imagine. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember when they were like 14, and I would look at them and be like, dang, when I was their age, I was already like out there, like in the street doing crazy stuff. Yeah, man, taking acid and shrooms, tripping, hallucinating, like doing everything I could get my hands on. The only drugs I didn't do, I just wasn't introduced to them. And so and I thought that that's first of all, I thought that's what the cool kids did. That was first, and then I realized that wasn't really the case, but it was too late. I was already in it. I was already in that lifestyle, and so yeah, it took a long time to get out.
So what would you say about talking to someone about, how we hear that alcohol and marijuana, weed are gateway drugs. What would you say to someone about that?
I mean, I think it's different for everybody, but for me, that was definitely the case. Like, and I used to argue with people about that, but then when I looked at my story, I was like, yeah, that was. In fact, when I was, if you read the book, so when I was 12 years old, my mom smoked a J with me, like for my 12th birthday, and her justification was, this is Berkeley, he's gonna do it anyway. You might as well do it at home where it's safe. I guess that was her justification. I don't know how great of a parenting move that was, but what that did was it opened the door for me, and she couldn't tell me not to do. How's she gonna tell me not to do something now? So I'd just be at home in my room, just lighting up. And then when other drugs came into it, it kind of opened the door for that for that lifestyle, for drugs in general. Now I know a lot of people who, smoke weed and never touched anything else, but that's just not my story. That opened the door for me to drugs and just for mood altering substances. And after a while, the weed wasn't really getting it, so I tried the next thing and the next thing, and I could never fill that hole that I was trying to fill. So,
Yeah.
but it was definitely a gateway drug for me.
Me too. Me too. That's definitely my story too, because I went on, I guess you could say, graduated to some harder drugs after my first experience with alcohol, then going into weed. Then
Mhm.
next thing you know, I started trying to sell crack, and then ended up lacing that on my
Yeah,
weed and my
yeah.
cigarettes, and then
Mhm.
later on went into drugs that I swore I would never touch. So
Mhm.
I
Yep.
definitely agree that it was a gateway for me as well. So
Mhm.
let me ask you this: when you started, give me your first recollection of having resentments towards whoever that was, and who was it? Who did you hold those resentments against, and
Mhm.
unforgiveness or anger?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I remember when my brother was removed. First of all, when Chris got taken out of our home and went to foster care, I thought he won. Right? That's
Mm.
crazy, right? I was like, oh, he won. He got out. We used to go visit him at his foster homes. I'd be like, man, this is nice. They got food in the refrigerator, and but but my point is that we used to be in these little family counseling meetings, and they asked me to try to identify feelings, and I'm like 10, 11. I couldn't identify a feeling. I couldn't. I had turned that all off anyway. So I really struggled with that. I really struggled. It wasn't until later as an adult when I started doing the work on myself that I was able to go back and say, oh, that's why, because I was resentful about A, B, and C. So to answer your question, I think the very first thing I was resentful about was being given away. When I found out I was given away at birth, that messed me up. I'm not going to even sugarcoat it like that. That really traumatized me to know that my mom, who carried me and had me, just gave me away, right? And so that I was very angry. That was the biggest resentment I had to deal with when I got sober, was the one with my birth mom, and then just everything else. I mean, being abused. I mean, when you're a child, you've heard of fight or flight, right?
Hmm.
But when you're a child, there's a third one. There's freeze, right? There's fight, flight, or free, because you can't fight back because you're a little kid and it's an adult abusing you, and then you can't fly because where are you gonna go? My brother tried it, but where are you gonna go? You're a little kid, so there's freeze, and so that's what I ended up doing. I would just freeze and just be stuck, and it took me a long time to get out of that, to find my voice, even as an adult, and um and to voice my opinion, and to have like to have healthy debate and healthy conversation and healthy conflict, because conflict is a part of life. But I didn't know what healthy conflict looked like, because all the conflict I knew was anger and violence, and so that's how I acted out. And so those are my first. The first one was my birth mom, then my adoptive mom, for the abuse and for having us live like that, and really just about everybody after that. I resented everybody. If you looked at me sideways, I resented you too. I mean, I resented everything, because I really think it was all based on fear. At the end of the day, I was fearful, and it acted because I never felt safe as a child, and so I just existed in fear, and that showed up as anger a lot.
Wow. I just got something out of that where you said fight, flight, or freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one, but yeah, that makes sense, especially at a young age where you can't fight back or you can't leave, or so you just deal with it the best way and just freeze up. So
Mm-hmm.
as far as in your story, you talk a lot about, in your book, you talk a lot about that too. So you would say, because I know there were some periods where you actually got in trouble and did some time. in jail. And would you say that that led you that unforgiveness, those resentments starting to build up, led you? I know you saying that that anger was kind of boggled up in you. Would you say that that led you to doing drugs and drinking more often and also getting in trouble with the law?
Yeah, definitely. It's that and the combination of I had no self-worth, so I didn't think that I had any value. I literally thought I was a disposable person, like I was a throwaway. I was given away at birth. Everybody left. If they didn't leave, they hurt me. So clearly, I was disposed. That's the best word. That's the perfect word to describe how I felt about myself. Disposable, like something you could just throw away. And so it didn't matter what I put in my body because, you know, I had no worth anyway.
Mm.
Uh, so my behavior, you know, doing the drugs and the drinking, and also my behavior, well, where I didn't care about the law. You know, from a young age, I was breaking in cars when I was 10 to get change for video games. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't care about society's rules or anything because I didn't think any of that applied to me because I didn't matter anyway. And so that's how I went through life. Just really kind of suicidal in a way. Not like I never like tried to commit suicide, like you know what I mean. I never like made an attempt, but I was doing it the slow way, I guess, and just doing everything I could to exit, you know, here.
I could,
so uh, so
yeah,
yeah,
I could definitely relate to that. Like not really coming up a plan to
yeah,
commit suicide, but our behavior and
hmm
our thoughts were suicidal ideation and the way we were carrying out things, like you said, just slowly self-destructing and
yeah,
killing ourselves. So tell me a little bit about that journey, because I know in the book you mentioned, I think you said at 21 you realized you were homeless at
yeah.
that point, right? After what, sleeping over a friend's house and his mother finding out, and then sleeping at the church or something like that.
Oh, you did read the book.
Oh yeah, I read the book, and I
Man,
encourage
you going into
everyone to
the
read it, man.
details. I
Yeah.
love it, man. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I don't, I'm trying to keep it quick, but I'm just gonna go through the whole. So when I was a senior in high school, about a couple weeks after the prom, I was introduced to crack cocaine. I didn't even know what it was. It was like you they were lacing it on the weed, and I didn't even really like it. I was like, man, y'all messing the weed up. But then I tried it a different way, and I got hooked immediately, right? And so I wasn't even out of high school yet, and I even walked the stage with the rock. I was high on crack when I walked the graduation stage and had a rock in my pocket, and that was in June of 87. And by January of 88, I was in rehab, and I turned 19 in rehab, and I got out and I stayed sober about 9 months or so and went back out. And I ended up going to jail for the first time when I was 20, and I turned 21 in jail. And so I always say I turned 19 in rehab, 21 in jail. And when I was released from Santa Rita, it's Alameda County Jail outside of Oakland, I was homeless. You know, I was 21 years old. I was homeless in my own hometown. And that's a hurting feeling, man. When you got family all around you, but you're not welcome, man, that's a hurting feeling. And but I blamed everyone else. Oh, you gave up on me. You don't love me. You don't understand. Instead of looking at my side of the street and the part I played to put everybody in the position to treat me like that. So that's when I left California. But yeah, I was homeless. Man, I was living in a detached basement on a dirt floor in a sleeping bag in my friend's mom's home. And then that lasted a couple of months, and she had some work done and opened up the basement door and saw all my stuff in there. So that the jig was up. I went to live in the YMCA. I got a room at the YMCA, and you know that was horrible. And then I got kicked out of there because I didn't pay the rent. So I went to the shelter. I started doing the shelter thing, and I was young, man. I was 21, you know, 22, and And so that's when I left Cali, and I ended up in DC. Who goes to DC to get out of trouble, man?
Right, right.
Me in
Yeah.
1991, right? Yep.
Wow. So
Yep.
I'm sure with that, like because you said what you said, you tried to go back to your mom's and she said no, and then you had
Yeah.
a run-in with the YMCA too, if I can recall that you were staying there
Mhm.
and
Yeah. I
they
was
didn't let you back or something like that.
Yeah, I was staying at the Y. And the funny thing about the YMCA is it's across the street from Berkeley, the high school in Berkeley. And when we were in high school, we used to joan on each other. We called it capping in California, but I know out here they call it joning, right? And
Uh-huh.
so and one of the insults was always, "Oh, that's why your mama live in the YMCA," or something, like the YMCA was where we thought losers lived, and because that's who we saw coming out of there, and so and I found myself living there. I was like, damn, man, like this is the how low can I go type thing, man. And so at the YMCA, I got kicked out of there. I wasn't paying the rent, but the reason I got kicked out was because I stole some money from them, and someone left they had left some uh, money laying around, and someone I reached under the desk and grabbed it when they were looking. But but it was in these envelopes, and so my dumb self took it back up to my room and just put it in my dresser. And then one morning, I just left the dresser open. And one thing about the YMCA, they had a cleaning crew that would come clean your room every day. It was kind of nice actually, that part. But they came in and saw, like I'm the world's dumbest criminal, man. Like God forbid you ever see if I go back out there, God forbid, and I say, Malik, I got a caper. Don't go, don't go. Like there's no plan. I'm not criminally minded. I'm not. And I have a conscience too. I found that out too. I have a conscience, so whenever I got caught, I would confess. I'm like, yeah, I did it. Like who does that, man? So yeah, I'm just not built for that life, but I sure tried for a long time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. Like I know for me it's the same thing. I wasn't built for it, and always had that conscience. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would have probably been right there with you. So yeah, so let me ask you this: during that time, did you start developing like a resentment towards yourself?
Yes, I'm glad I forgot to mention that. Yeah, when you asked me about my first resentments, that's what I was leading to when I said I had no self-worth. Yes, I resented myself. Um, my self-talk was, man, I wouldn't, if somebody talked to me the way I talked to myself back then, I'd have a problem with that.
Hmm.
Like you dummy, I'm trying not to cuss. But I would use very, very colorful language to talk to myself. And um and I treated myself. I and this will probably come out later as we talk, but I ended up writing a letter to my inner child as part of my healing process. And in the letter, as I was writing the letter, I realized, man, I hated you, little
Mm,
Jimmy. They called me Jimmy when I was a kid. I hated you. I tried to kill you because
mm,
that's what I thought you deserved. And like if anybody treated me or a kid or somebody the way I treated myself, I mean, I'd confront them. I'd like, man, nah, you can't treat nobody like that, Slim. But that's how I treated myself, and a lot of us do that, man. Like we treat ourselves worse than we'd allow anybody to treat us. You know what I mean? And
yes.
that's kind of insane. It's kind of insane behavior. But yeah, I had a huge resentment against myself just for because I just for existing, just for being such a piece of trash that I thought
Wow.
I was. Yeah.
Man, that's so powerful. And I think somebody needs to hear that right now. And
Mhm.
because that self-talk, what we say to ourselves, the things that are going on, what they call it, the stinking thinking,
Yeah.
what's going on in our mind, that we could either tear ourselves up or we could build ourselves up. And that's so important. And I think someone, what would you what advice could you give someone to stop doing that, stop tearing themselves down
Yeah.
with what they're saying about themselves? Because I used to do the same thing. Say, man, you a idiot, man.
Mhm.
You keep doing this same stuff. You a fool. Like,
Mhm.
all of those things. And it wouldn't do anything but tear me down more to make me repeat the vicious cycle that I was in, to continue to try to numb that, but with
Yep.
alcohol and drugs. So what would you tell someone
Yeah.
that's saying that to themselves?
Yeah, you described the cycle perfectly right there. Yep. I'm sorry, but I remember one time I came off a binge and I was so angry at myself that I literally beat myself up. Like I started punching myself and I was lumped up the next day. Like someone beat me up. Like I literally, like, how they say don't beat yourself up. I literally beat myself up because I was so angry at myself and so disgusted at my own behavior. But man, what I would say, for me, for a lot of us, we've been given um, negative seeds were planted in us as children, right? Destructive seeds were planted in us. Seeds that told us that we were worthless. Seeds that told us that we had no value. Seeds that told us we were unwanted. And we have to dig those seeds up, man. And the way we dig them, the tool we have to use to dig them up is called action. Right?
Mm.
It takes massive action to dig those seeds up. And so we have to confront and release those resentments, but we have to confront them and release them. And so because resentments, the Webster's, I'm gonna try to remember this. The definition of resentment is um, um, a strong. I have to look it up, but it has to do with how we feel about being treated unfairly.
Mm.
It was very strong feeling about being treated unfairly, and um, and so I really felt like I'd been treated unfairly. I really did, and so I'm just I'm looking at it. I'm looking it up now. Bitter indignation. That's what it is. Bitter
Mm.
indignation at being treated unfairly. Bitter indignation, like not just indignant, but bitterly indignant about
Mm.
being treated unfairly, and that's what resentments are. So yeah, I would tell them if you're giving yourself that self-talk, that negative self-talk, it's probably because that's what was given to you as a child. It usually stems from childhood. And I'm no psychologist, but I just know for myself and for a lot of people I work with, and when I speak, people come up to me after and they're like, "Yep." And so we have to dig those seeds up, man. We have to dig those seeds up. I mean, that's what I advocate for is going into action. Of course, prayer and faith and being delivered, but we also have to do the work of ain't no magic trick because that's what kept me stuck for so long. I just wanted to be struck, sane, and I didn't realize I had to get in there and dig that stuff up. And so that's what will release you from giving yourself that negative self-talk because we all have value. We're all amazing. And quite frankly, there are people out there who can only get help from what you give them, right? And so
Mm.
we all have an assignment, and God needs us at our best because there are people who will only receive it from you, whoever I'm talking to, and so we have to. It's like our responsibility actually to dig that stuff up. It wasn't our fault that it happened, but now that we recognize what's happening, it's up to us to do the work to get better.
That's so good. That's so good. And I mean, I can relate directly to that. And I love how you put in spiritual principles and practical strategies with that because I think that's so important. Like,
Mhm.
faith without works is dead, right?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yes,
So,
sir. Yes, sir.
so with me, I know a big part of overcoming that self-talk was God's word.
Yeah.
Scriptures. Who does God say that I am?
Mm-hmm.
And my
Mm-hmm.
identity being found in Christ, not
Mm-hmm.
not in what I was told, not even what I say about myself.
Mm-hmm.
So having that foundation of knowing what God, and then like you said, knowing what God says about me, and then like you said, putting in the work, getting to those deep rooted
Mhm.
issues, those seeds that were planted, and getting to it. And that's where I think we both can agree that, the 12-step programs helped
Mhm.
us out going through steps.
Mhm.
And whether it's therapy, talking to someone else, building a support system and talking about these things of trusted accountability team and people that you can confide in, but really going deep with those things. So
Yeah.
even with self-talk, I wanted to ask you this. And by the way, everybody, everything that James is talking about is pretty much in the book. The true compelling stories and just how he put everything all together is so awesome. And I know you're going to get a lot out of it. So I wanted to ask you, even with the self-talk, what is your stance on someone going, say they're in, AA or
Mhm.
GANA, one of the meetings, and they're labeling themselves and saying that, hey, my name is so and so and I'm an addict, but they haven't had a drink or a drug or
Mhm.
haven't done that thing in some years and they're walking in freedom. What
Mhm.
is your take on someone who's has a question about that or says, man, I don't think I don't like that, calling myself that?
Then don't. I mean, like we make it so like there's people in the meetings that say, "Hey, I'm James and I'm a recovered alcoholic," or I don't drink," or they just say, "I'm James," or like there's no rule that says like they're not gonna kick you out. Like don't miss your blessing because of semantics, right? Because when I need to go back to yeah, so with that, I'm a huge proponent of the 12-step model. Let's just put that out there right now. I'm almost 13 years sober, and I still go to 3 or 4 meetings a week. And I do say I'm James. I'm an alcoholic. I mean, it's just how I introduce myself. I and what I mean by that is I can't take a drink safely. That's all I mean. Like if you feel like you can take a drink safely, then you know have at it. I can't do it. I've been delivered. But
Amen.
there, and I'm talking to the church folks now because I'm also ordained, licensed ordained minister with a degree from Bible college. I pastor the church. I love the Lord. I love church. I love everything about the Word.
Amen.
But and faith without works, and that was my problem for so long because I jumped in. I had an experience you read about when I was in jail facing 30 years to life, and the hooping preacher with the Jerry curl was doing that. And I tried. I was like, oh hallelujah! And something happened, and I had a change, and and uh and all that. And so I used to go try to get slapped with the oil, run around the church 3 times, and I'm good. I'm free. And the next day I'll be in the crack house because I ain't
Yes.
put the work in. I ain't put the work in. So I think that's a trick of the enemy, actually, that church folks, frankly, down talk down about the 12-step model because you got to go in those places and call yourself an addict. No, you don't. That's contempt prior to investigation is what that is. That's someone who's never been in the rooms saying that you don't have to say anything. You don't even have to speak. You don't even have to introduce yourself. I do it because it's a reminder of myself that I can't take a drink safely or do a drug safely, and I don't want to play with that. And so I can't take a drug or drink safely. And so that's what I was going to. Um I am delivered. I am God delivered me. But Malik, I was delivered many times, bro. Like this ain't the first time I got delivered. You know what I'm saying? Like I've
Mm,
been delivered, man, countless times. But there's a difference between being delivered and being free.
yes.
And that's actually a message that I preach from the pulpit. There's a difference between being delivered and being free, because the children of Egypt were delivered.
Mm,
They were delivered. Moses led them on out of Egypt, but they weren't free. And that's why they're like, we want to go back. Who would want to go back to indentured servitude. You know what I mean? But
Yes.
that's the insanity. It's the same thing with any addiction. That's why so many of us relapse and go back because we're not free. You can tie me to a guy I know in the rooms. I think you know him. Says you can tie me to a tree. I'm delivered. I can't, but what happens when you untie me? What am I going to do? So am I free? And
Mm.
so that's the work you have to put in order to really get free. So I hear that all the time. Oh, you got to go in there and say you an alcoholic. You delivered, brother. You ain't got to say that. Okay. I do, but you don't have to. No one, you don't have to. You don't have to say anything. You can say, I'm James. Happy to be here. You don't even have to say that. So for me, that's a trick of the enemy to keep people from getting their blessing. If you miss your blessing because of a phrase or because of semantics or because you think you're claiming something you're not, then don't claim it. But get your help. Get your help because for me, and I know that the 12-step model doesn't have the market cornered on recovery. I know however you get free, just get free. But for me, those 12 steps set me free. And when I talk about writing those letters and doing the work, the massive action that it takes, I'm talking about the 12 steps. I'm talking about the work I did, the God ordained steps that God gave the founders of AA and it's all biblically based. I mean, and I know you know this, the at the beginning of AA, they didn't have a big book. They read from the book of James. And what does it say in the book of James? Faith without works is dead, right? So anyway, I'm going on. So you got me going, man. Because I really am passionate about this exact thing where people decide it's not for them because you got to go in those places and say you're this and that. It's not true. You don't have to say anything. Like I said, I choose to because I just want to remind myself because my mind is tricky that I cannot go take a drink safely, and that will always be true. That will always be true.
Wow, man, look, that right there, that's my passion too. Like, we might have to come back and do a whole another session on that because it's so many things you said in there and so many things I can relate to because yes, Jesus delivered me. He
Mm-hmm.
who the Son sets free is
Mm-hmm.
free indeed. And I
Mm-hmm.
love how you broke that down, that there's a difference between being delivered and
Mm-hmm.
being free
Mm-hmm.
out of bondage, and talking about how the Israelites were
Mm-hmm.
freed, but
Mm-hmm.
they had that bondage mindset. They kept
Yep.
complaining, kept
Mm-hmm.
saying all, didn't even get to experience freedom because their mind was still stuck on what it would be like if they were still in bondage.
Mm.
So I love how you broke that down. And for you, you're saying that you're an alcoholic. You're not saying that to deny that you've been set free or
Mm-hmm.
to deny that you've been delivered by God. It's just a reminder saying that,
Mm-hmm.
hey, look, I can't take a drink. I can't
Yeah.
I can't do that. And
I'm
and
allergic. Yeah.
yes.
I break out in handcuffs.
Yeah, yeah, allergic, right? We break out in handcuffs in jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and I love that part, and just to say this, I was the same way, I battled in the beginning with going to AA and because I went through the same thing. I went through the 12 steps and I did find deliverance through those 12 steps. And a lot of people don't understand that God is all in AA, all in NA, whatever those meetings, GA. It's all based on biblical principles and
Yeah.
spiritual principles. And I didn't know that about James. I didn't know that. So
Oh, okay.
the book
Yeah.
of James being the
Mm-hmm.
first thing they used, but I
Mm-hmm.
did know that. So in the beginning, it was tough for me hearing, your higher power could be anything. And, it was tough, but guess what? I was there for me to get healed and delivered. So I couldn't focus on what anyone else is doing. If that's working for them, then that's working for them.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I here? Am I here to get delivered? Am I here to work these steps and get to the core of what's going on with me, the root of, because we all
Yeah,
know that what they say that the actual using is only a symptom
symptom.
of what the real problem is.
Hmm.
So I'm just glad you explained that. I hope a lot of people listen to this and hear that, because it's really, and there are many pathways to recovery. And we're not here saying that, this is the only way that will work or whatever. We're just saying this is what worked for us.
Hmm.
But I thank you for talking about that, and we may have to talk more about that at some point. So,
And I and you just sparked. Yeah, this is going to be a whole conversation. So, but the last thing I'll say on this is with with that piece when people and I still I'm not gonna lie, I still my spirit still goes like when I hear people say, "Oh, I serve this thing," and I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, like it vexes my spirit, but I serve a God who's able to reveal Himself when He needs to and when He wants to whom He is going to reveal Himself to. So, if someone's really
amen.
seeking, I believe that they're going to be okay. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I use the doorknob initially,
All right.
but God is able to reveal Himself in His true, who He really is, Jesus. To
Amen. And I,
to
I do believe God is the source, and he puts forth us resources. And these are
Mhm.
different resources, AA and people that he put in our lives. And I mean the divine connections, like meeting you through
Mhm.
through the fellowship of AA. You see what I'm saying? It's like, I ended up getting my bankruptcy attorney, you know, so many different ended up. That's why actually this is why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because of divine connection that God gave me. A gentleman that I know, that he gave me so many resources to become a certified peer recovery specialist, to
Mhm.
to write my book, to start
Mhm.
my addiction recovery coaching business. This is through the fellowships of
Mhm.
AAGA. So
Amen.
God is good. He will
Oh,
bring it all together.
yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
that's awesome, man. So look, I wanted to ask you, in your book, you talked about addiction being a feeling disease.
Mhm. Yeah,
Can you explain what you mean by that?
yeah. Addiction is a feeling disease. And when I think that's where in the book I separate disease into dis-ease,
Ease. Yes.
right? Dis-ease, because there's something common about most of us who suffer from the disease of addiction is we just never felt comfortable in our own skin. Like we've always felt dis at ease. And so that's why the play on words, the disease is a dis-ease, because we're just never felt at ease. And it centers in the brain, the disease and the disease. and and so yeah, and so we've always felt that, and we've always had that uncomfortable feeling, and we saw different methods to either suppress it or just overcome it. A lot of people drink just to get rid of their inhibitions, right? Now I can dance, now I can talk to girls, now I can, or so they think, right? And so that's why a lot of people do it. But for me and a lot of us, we never learned how to um, appropriately deal with our feelings, right? And so that's why in the rooms you hear life on life's terms a lot, and because part of life is conflict, part of life is anger, part of life is sadness, part of life is grief, part of life all is loneliness. Like these are all common emotions that everyone goes through. And the difference between us is that we respond to these feelings insanely. And insane, and I had a problem with that word too when I first came in, because I was like, what you gonna call me crazy or something, But all insane means is sound think is all sanity means is sound thinking, soundness of mind. That's all it means, right? And so I had to admit that my thinking had never been sound. And so I responded to everything inappropriately or insanely. I responded in anger, or I would run, or I would, or instead of just sticking in there, dealing with the emotion, dealing with the conflict or whatever it is in an appropriate way. And I'm still learning that, man. Because I mean, Malik, I'll tell you, sometimes my anger, I feel it coming. I feel that thing coming, man, and I'm like, what would a sane person do right now? Because James is about to show up, and I do not need him showing up right now. And I would just act as if I was a normal person sometimes. Like, really, I just have to act my way into it. And then it passes, but it's still, man, it still rears its ugly head, at times. And so yeah, and so that's what the feeling part of it is. Feelings are normal, they're God-given. All those so-called negative feelings I just mentioned, anger, grief, sadness, loneliness, that's all God-given for whatever reason he gave that to us. And every single person in the world goes through these feelings, but we respond to them insanely, and we try to stuff them, cover them up, avoid them. And so learning how to deal with them, learning how to hang in there and going through the feeling. I remember one of the first times I was so angry. I don't even remember what it was or who it was, but I remember I was so angry. And my normal response would be to lash out and just cuss somebody out, and I remember the first time I just shut my mouth and didn't say, and just let it pass. And within about 30 seconds, it was gone. And I was like, whoa. And I was probably like 42. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was a whole grown man. I was like, that's the secret. Just pause. Just pause, and it passes. It doesn't, because if you lash out, then it extends the problem. Then you have to go make an amends. You have to go apologize, and or you have to clean up the wreckage that you make. Um, but if you just pause and let it pass, the anger goes away. It's like I tell you, I don't even remember what it was. That's how unimportant it was. But at the time, man, I got to straighten this person out. And today I literally don't remember what it was. And probably the next day I couldn't remember what it was. If we let that anger pass, just pause, let it dissipate, we won't even remember what we were angry about. I
That's
was, I was thinking about this. I'm sorry. I was thinking about this in traffic yesterday because I get angry in traffic too. And
me too, but go ahead.
I don't think it's avoidable, but um, I was so angry at this person in front of me because they pulled in front of me all fast and then just went 10 miles an hour. I was like, what was the hurry to get in front of me? And so, but then I remembered, I think God gave this to me. I was like, I've been angry in traffic a lot of times, but I can't even remember one specific episode about why I was angry. In other words, like, stuff happens, but it's so unimportant that within a day or two, I don't even remember. You know what I mean? It's like it seems
Yeah,
like I'm saying I gotta like go around this person, honk my horn or something, but it's not that serious. And I've done stupid things in traffic too that probably you know tick people off. So I guess all I'm saying, man, Malik, is that usually it's just not that important. In the moment it seems like it is, but it's usually not. So just responding to our natural God-given feelings in an appropriate, sane manner is kind of what recovery is. A lot of what recovery is about.
that's good. That's a great explanation. And as you were talking, I was sitting there thinking that, when I came in, and I still consider myself early in recovery, 3.5 years. And congratulations to you too on that. What'd you say, 13 years?
13, July 14th will be 13 years. Yeah.
Amen. That's great, man. Congratulations. And we know this thing is one day at a time, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So, I just remember, early, and like I said, I consider myself early in recovery, a little bit over 3.5 years clean from alcohol and
Congratulations.
drugs.
That's a miracle.
Yes, great by the grace of God, right?
Yes, sir.
And then a little bit over 3 years of no gambling. And
Mhm.
so I remember early on and just thinking like, yeah, when I stop drinking and using drugs and stop gambling, man, I'm gonna be just fine. But the reality is, as we learn, that we have character defects.
Yes, sir.
We have
Yes,
sinful behavior and sinful thoughts that are
yes.
always trying to creep and come out.
Mhm.
So, going through those situations like you were just talking about, and really, like you said, learning how to deal with these situations, because I think this is true. I heard something, and I can just use my experience that because I had used for so many years,
Mhm.
drinking in over 30 years of my life, more than half of my life. I'm 52 now.
Mhm.
So, and didn't get clean till I was 49.
Mhm.
So, those attitudes, immature behavior, not being a responsible adult, it's
Mhm.
like I was the same age when I started picking up around 15,
Yeah.
16, when these things would come up. That's that 15-year-old boy, 16-year-old boy that's coming out with
Mhm.
this anger and how to, because I didn't know how to handle confrontation. I didn't know how to handle life on life's terms in these situations. So it's like almost having to renew my mind all the way. It is
Yes.
renewing my mind and
Yes.
learning how to become a adult, and
Great
handling
information.
things in an adult way. So,
Yes.
and I think about that with resentments,
Mm.
how important it is to let go and forgive, because you just talked about it. We're mad at something that if we pause and let it go, it's going to pass by. But
Mhm.
holding on to that thing we think we're hurting someone else, but the truth of the matter is we're only hurting ourselves. And like we talked about, the analogy is like drinking that poison and
Yeah.
expecting that other person to die from us drinking the poison.
Mhm.
So, I just think I like how you broke that down with the feeling disease and what it really is, and how the emotions and
Mm.
things come up in life that we have to learn how to deal with.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think a lot of us spend a lot of time trying to find an easier, softer way of living, right?
Yeah.
And sidestepping the life stuff. And and we're learning how to just how to live life on life's terms. Everyone gets a turn with
Mm.
all those things. And so yeah, it's just all in how you deal with it. And yeah, that's a Nelson Mandela quote. Yeah, having a resentment or having unforgiveness towards someone is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, and that's insane, right? And that's not
Yes.
sound thinking, but that's exactly how when I mentioned I was sober, I was clean 9 months back when I turned 19 in rehab. I stayed sober 9 months, which I know doesn't sound like a long time, but I think me and you know when you're 19 in your hometown and you can stay sober for 9 months, like that's a miracle. But I did what they told you. You know how they tell you don't make any major life decisions your first year.
Yes.
Specifically, don't jump into any relationships your first year, man. You're not ready. And I was like, man, I'm 19. I'm jumping everywhere I can jump. And I fooled around and fell in love, man. We fall in love quick too.
Yes,
Broad,
sir.
broad generalization, but for the most part. And 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 so I thought me and her were monogamous. I learned a big word, monogamous, and that means me and you against the world. But she didn't get that memo, and when I found out that I was just on the team, my heart broke, and so so I was like, I'll show you, I'll hurt me, right? That's what so many of us do. I'll show you, I'll hurt me. And I sure showed her, man, because I went back out for 24 years of pain and misery.
Mm.
Uh, knowing where the solution was. And I'm quite sure she forgot about me within a week and went on about her life. But that's what a lot of us do. We use to our feelings and or gamble or have inappropriate sex or shopping or whatever the addiction, however it shows up. A lot of it is to our feel. A lot of people eat to their feelings. A lot of people eat emotionally. That's how they escape or suppress. And so yeah, we have to learn how to just stick in there and go through it and find support. And that's another great thing about the meetings. You can go in there and just unload some stuff sometimes. Like, man, this is what I'm going through. And that's something that and I love the Lord, I love church, I love church folks, but I can't necessarily go up in a church and say, hey, I'm really struggling with you know
Yes, sir.
with A, B, or C, and because stigmas start to get attached to you, and so that's another reason
That's
for peer support.
That's good. That's good. That leads me right into what I wanted to talk to you about next in your book. And we have so many similarities, and I think that's just one of those things having more in common.
Yeah.
Just being overcomers of addiction and being living the lifestyle we live through addiction actively. So I wanted to talk to you about the women. It seemed like you were a ladies' man too, and like you said, falling in love that first week of meeting someone, and just the part that played in your story, all the different women, that codependency
Mm,
factor, not wanting to be alone, needing validation, and all of
yeah.
those things, and then eventually leading to more resentments, right?
Yeah, yeah, man, you would have to bring that up, man. I mean, I had a very and thank God, God just did me a solid, and I found my
Yes,
wife, Marshall, and we're about to
yes.
celebrate our 13th wedding anniversary in April. But
Congratulations.
yeah, thank God, because my picker was definitely broken, and I just I think a lot of it was the low self-esteem and self-worth I had. So every time, and I mentioned in the book, because I had some beautiful girlfriends, man, and I always was like, why are they with me? Like I never understood why they were with me, but man, I was cool with it, but I didn't understand, and I never felt like I deserved any good things. So when good things would come my way, I would just sabotage it,
Hmm.
because I ain't deserve it, and she's gonna find out who I really am anyway and leave me. So I might as well just pick an argument, and storm out before she dumps me. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I had a lot of girlfriends, man, and and some of them hung in there with me as long as they could, but I was just too much of a mess, man, and I would always just sabotage it, and then like you said, or they would dump me when they realize, oh, this dude is broken, and,
Hmm.
and like you said, that would initiate a whole nother resentment for me to add to my list, and
Yes,
keep perpetuating that cycle.
yes. And I reading the book too, the part about when you met your wife, it was like if you met her earlier than that, you probably would have messed that up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
It-
have.
and the Bible, I love the verse. It talks about, a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing and
Hmm.
obtains favor from the
Favor.
Lord.
Come
So,
on, man. I love the B portion. Everybody quotes the A portion of that verse, but the
yes,
B portion is where the victory is, man. And
amen.
obtains favor from the Lord, man. It's not just about the good thing, which is amazing, but also who doesn't want favor from the Lord? So, I mean, yeah, man, it's a promise in the Bible. Yes, I'm sorry, you got me excited with that verse.
No, that's all right. That's what that's good.
Yeah,
And I wanted to talk a little bit about that.
yeah,
What favor has
yeah.
happened, has God shown you since meeting your wife?
Man, amen, amen. It almost makes me emotional because when I met my wife Marshall, man, I had nothing, bro. I was starting life all over again. You
Mm,
know, I was 42, living in a room. Um, I think I was working at Popeyes or something, and I truly found my good thing, my helpmeet and my favor, because she encouraged me and she saw the God in me. Let me say this: Marshall is a very spiritual woman, and she's a PK. She's a pastor's kid, and but she's a real woman of God, right? And I say she has like a direct line to God, which I know we all do. It's like a figure of speech. She really has this direct line, and she sees things that a lot of people don't see, and she didn't see who was standing in front of her. I don't think she saw who God was developing, I guess, and she said she knew I was her husband. And again, I couldn't for the life of me figure out. I brought nothing to the table. I remember I went on a date once before I met her, and this woman, she was a lawyer. I mean, and she told me, "You don't bring enough to the table." She told me straight. I mean, like I appreciated it that she was honest, but that it hurt, man. She's like, yeah, you don't bring enough to the table, bro." I was like, dang. So, so the favor that God has shown me since I've been married. I mean, I could talk about the material things because that has definitely shown up. But just that to have that person who has your back no matter what, that is something that I've never experienced in my life. I've never experienced someone who just got you. Even if you're wrong, she's gonna be with you. Now she's gonna tell you when we get home. Don't get it twisted. They ain't gonna let you off the hook, but not gonna throw you under the bus. Not gonna just gonna support you, and I think we do that for each other. We encourage each other to be our best person, to be the best James, the best Marshall that we can be. And we're a team. I just came from. That's why I ran in here. I slid in right at the starting time because I was just. She is the she works for the city of Laurel, and they were doing this big opening. I went to support her, and the city council president came up to me afterwards and said, "I love how you always support your wife." Because she's a director of a multi-service center down there. Um, she's a department head now, actually. And I love how you always support your wife. I'm like, yeah, we're a team. I mean, she supports me on my stuff. I support her on hers. And we know that if no one else got us, we got us. And that for me, that is so priceless, man. Just to have that, that support. And yeah, I even the career I have is because of her, because she
Oh.
encouraged me to put this guy I knew was like, "Hey, I know the executive director of this nonprofit. Give me your resume." I'm like, "Man, ain't nobody gonna hire me. My resume says Popeyes, Starbucks. Like it's not like a professional. I haven't been in the professional world." And she's like, "Go ahead," and she encouraged me to do it. I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for her. And I ended up getting the job, and I since have had a great career in workforce development. So she found my biological family. My wife did. I don't know if you were getting to that, but
Oh
she's the one
yeah.
who found
Oh yeah. I saw that in the book.
them.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah, she's
And
the one who found them.
I was looking at the book and I said, man, James has to be the only man that I know that proposed without a ring. And she said yes. I said,
Oh
that's
man, you
got to
found
be
out.
God.
Yeah, I did. I went up there because we had a long distance relationship. She was in Michigan and I was in Maryland, and I went up there to visit that Thanksgiving in 2011. And I was just like, I don't want to lose her. I don't like this
Yes.
is my wife. This is my wife. I got down on my knee and I was like, will you marry me? And and uh and she was like, I'll marry you. I know you're my husband, but you gotta do better than this, man. You gotta at least bring a ring to the table. But she agreed to marry me. And I didn't even
Yes.
have a ring at the time, man. And we since worked on that and got her the ring. And actually, we just upgraded. I don't want to. I don't want to flex,
That's
that.
right. Nah, that's all right. Show give glory to God what he's doing. That's all right.
Glory to God, man. We upgraded. She got a nice rock on that finger now, bro. So,
Yeah, people need to hear this, man. This is good, and it just shows what God has for you is going to be yours. And it's also encouraging to me, man, because I'm engaged now. So
oh, congratulations,
yeah,
man.
glory to God,
I didn't know
man.
that.
And I truly know that this is the one God has allowed me to find my wife. And
Yeah.
it's just so encouraging to me, and also to anyone who's believing that things can't turn around for you. You
Yeah.
know, God can turn it around and blow your mind
Well, you
in
mind.
recovery and putting Him first and putting in
Yeah.
the work. So I
That's
just
the
wanted
word.
to touch on that. And before we went into a little bit, a couple more things, man, like I wanted to talk a little bit about you had a saying, because talk a little bit about your transformation when going through during time. And I know you were, I think you said it was a 3 to 9, but even coming out of that, it was like that still struggle. You
Yeah.
stay clean for a little while, and then you
Hmm.
go back out. And I think even at one point you had like stopped. You became like a middleman to where you
Yeah.
weren't using, but you were getting money from someone just to take them to get this stuff.
Hmm.
And even some of the insanity, man, like getting going to cop something, they taking your money, and then they take your money to go get it, but don't bring it back or whatever, or take your money. Then you go back to the ATM,
Oh, yeah.
get more money, and go back to the same exact location where they took it,
That was me.
to try to cop.
Yeah.
So, I just
Hey.
want to talk a little bit about those experiences, the
Yeah.
insanity, and
Yeah.
coming out of jail, even if your experience in jail, coming out and then still struggling,
Yeah.
and then leading up to that encounter that you had with God, and still
Mhm.
not going through it again.
Yep. Again and again, over and over. One thing about me, I kept trying.
Yes.
Kept trying to get clean, man. I really did, man. But that's why I always say there's a difference between being delivered and being free, man. But but man, you brought back some memories actually that I forgot that I actually put in the book. But yeah, I one time I went down to cop, and this was in the early '90s when DC was a war zone, man. And I went down there, and these dudes got my car, and I knew they were gonna rob me. Like you could just feel it, like I'm getting
Hmm.
robbed. And I was just like, just get it over with, man. And two of them bolted, and they took my money. It was $100. They took my money and ran. And the third dude was right behind me. I was in the driver's seat. He was right behind me, and he didn't leave. Right. So I was like, I'm about to get killed. Like, I really thought he was about to shoot me in the back of my head.
Mm.
And I looked at him in the rearview mirror, and he looked at me. And I swear, Malik, the look he gave me was like a look of apology, man. Like I'm not. I know it sounds crazy, but it was almost like he was sorry, and he was just like, like he had seen so much dirt being done, and he was just so over it all. It seemed like he was just like, man. And then he got out, and because the other dudes had left and left the doors open, and he got out like politely closed his door and stuff, and left. And I was like, okay, I'm still alive, and I closed my doors. I got out of there, and then the insanity kicked in. I was like, well, I got more money. I went back to the ATM, got another $100, went right back to that corner, and got what I wanted from some different people, obviously. But yeah, but that's the insanity. Who would do that? Go right back to where you just got robbed, and But that's me. A lot of episodes like that. A lot of stuff where I could have been killed. And yeah, I went to jail. It got so bad because it got to a point where I was on crack, heroin. I was on everything, and I was robbing people to get, and I was the dumbest criminal, man. Um, but I got caught within about a month, and I went to jail. But I was facing 30 years to life. Like I was legit facing 30 to life because armed robbery. They give you kidnapping when you rob someone too. I found out. Who knew? But they can give you kidnapping too. So these are very serious charges, and I was facing 30 years to life, and I signed off on that. I had an experience in the chapel. I told you the preacher, the Jerry Curl, and I had this whole experience, and God, I got on my knees and prayed for the first time in my life because I wasn't raised in the church. So I got on my knees in my cell and I was like, God, if you're real, can you do something about this 30 years? And it's like I kept getting this message like, trust me, trust me, trust me, take that deal and trust me. And I was like, is there anyone else I can talk to? I was like, I want to take the deal, man. But anyway, I signed off on 30 years to life, and the judge had mercy and gave me 3 to 9. I did 4 on that, and I got out. And I stayed clean for about a year or so after I got out of jail, just because I was just like, man, I can't, man. I just white knuckled it. I didn't have any support or I just, like I'm delivered. I'm not gonna do it. But I was still the same person with all the same resentments. And so it would show up. I was just angry all the time. Nothing was funny, but I wasn't using, but I was a miserable person. And I eventually went back to using, um, violated my parole with dirty drug screens, went back to jail for 8 month hit. And during that 8 month hit, I was in a prison riot. And I got out of the prison riot untouched, grace of God. And that's when I really realized, Malik, man, I was like, man, what's going to be next? Like this is my life's on the line at this point. I was 37, 38. So that youthful invincibility was starting to wane. And I was realizing, that this is real now. And I realized I really needed to leverage my, second, third, fourth chance and figure out how to make a real lasting change. Because I had tried so many things, and every time I was like, this time things are going to be different. This time, when I left California, this time things will be different. Or I got the big job, this time things, or the relationship, this time things will be different. But I never worked on James. I never put the work in. So this time was never different because I still had those resentments. I still had that feeling of being unwanted, that feeling of worthlessness, the feeling of having no value. And so no matter what external changes I made, even, and my apologies to our church folks, but even the prayers I did, like without any work on me, like God wasn't going to strike me sober. And for some people, that's their testimony, and that's fantastic. Some people just like the taste just left my mouth, and I never, man, I wish I had that testimony. It's not my
Yes.
testimony. God did it a different way with me, and I had to dig out that stuff and get rid of that mess, that toxic um, mess that was in me. I had to get it up out, and God wasn't going to just yank it. He's like, you got to do your part too, bro. And when I got desperate enough, and when I crawled back into the 12-step rooms and I got me a sponsor and we started working through these steps, and that's when I experienced my freedom. And that's when the transformation happened because I did the work. And what I mean was it was really around the 8th and 9th step for me, that then that's where you make a list of people that you've harmed and then you make amends to them. And that's when I started writing those letters. And the two biggest ones were the one to myself, as you mentioned, and my birth mother, who I was very angry at. And those two were probably going to kill me at the end of the day. And so I wrote the letter to little Jimmy. And like I said, and the two main components of it were I apologize and I promise I'll never treat you like that again. And I made a promise to my inner child who was with me through all that, through the alleyways, the gunshots, the prison riots, he was there, the trap houses. He was there. All those big tough guys have an inner child that is scared, man. Like we're taking our inner child to these places and he's scared. And
Mm.
we're feeding him poison every day or doing other, like you mentioned, gambling or shopping or eating or whatever the destructive behavior is. And we're doing it to our inner child. And they're there like, and so if anybody treated my inner child the way I did, I'd have a big problem with that. And so I made the apology and I made the promise to my inner child. And then my birth mother, I and that was a kicker, man. That for me, that was a kicker because I believe we all have that one person who did the unforgivable, right? Who we're not letting them off the hook. And for me, it was my birth mother because I didn't do nothing to her. She gave me away. Why should I have to address that at all? I didn't do. I was the victim, and so remember bitter indignation of having been treated unfairly, and so I thought that was the epitome of being treated unfairly, being thrown away at birth. That's how I took it. And so, I wrote her a letter because I know she was dead or alive, and she was, I know who she was. And I wrote a letter, and in the letter, I forgave her. I forgave her. And I'm not gonna lie. And the first part of the letter was like, how could you have done that? I was a baby. But then I got through all that, and then I was like, you know what? I don't know the backstory. I'm holding you to a level that I can't even obtain, to a standard that I can't even, obtain. I'm holding you to this really high standard. I don't know you. I don't know the backstory. I don't know the circumstances. Maybe you did what you did out of love. Maybe you thought that would be my best shot. I don't know. I had made the decision to have a resentment. And so when I let her off the hook, and then I not only forgave her, but I apologized to her. And that was
Oh,
the hit, man. And the apology was for holding the resentment. At that time, I was 43 years old. That's a long time to hold a grudge. And it was killing me, man. It was killing me. And when I let my birth mother off the hook and apologized to her for holding that resentment, that's when I was free. That's when it's like a 400-pound boulder just rolled off my back. I didn't even know I was carrying it around the whole time, but it just rolled off my back, and I was free. And I know you have a moving company. That's another job I had. I moved for a couple of years. I was a mover, and pianos are heavy, like or like pool tables, slate, like those real heavy things, like that's what I was carrying around on my back, and that just rolled off, and I was finally free. And that's when I believe God said, "Okay, now you're ready." And that's when He opened up the door to my marriage, my reconciliation with my birth mother, which was a complete miracle. That's why I wrote the book. When we found my mom, bro, when I hugged my mother for the first, I was 48 years old when I hugged my mother for the first time in my life, man.
wow.
48. When I hugged my mom, this feeling of being filled in, that's the only way I can describe it. It's like I filled in.
Wow.
And man, and I was like, okay, God, you can take me anytime. I mean, I'm not wishing that, but it's like that's how I felt. I just felt like I'm good. Like there's nothing else I could ask for. The rest of this is bonus time. Like that's all I wanted was to hug my mom, man, and and I did. So
Wow.
that was the transformation. Again, I was delivered many many times. I quit many many times, uh, but I was always the same person with the same resentments, the same anger, the same fears. That didn't go anywhere. And so it wasn't until I dug all that stuff out that I was truly set free. And that's when the transformation, that's why I call my talk the transformative power of releasing resentments, because
Yes.
it will transform you from the inside out.
Well,
Yeah.
James, man, this has been awesome, man. And you were able to do that through step 8 and 9. Is that what you're saying? That kind of prompted that opening up to write that letter to your mom and to get to that point where you let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, steps 4 and 5 kind of
Yeah,
um they inform steps 8 and 9, but 9 is where you actually take the action of
yes.
the
I
amends.
I had
Yeah.
that same experience with those 4 steps, 4 and 5 and
Mhm.
8 and 9.
Yeah.
I had already had a release of carrying those bricks that
Yeah.
weight on 4 and 5. But when I
Yeah.
got to 8 and 9 and I wrote down that long list of
Hmm.
people, and then that part of taking accountability, even though if someone 4 and 5, even though they might have harmed me,
Hmm.
I still had to clean my side of the street and think
Yeah.
about what did I do? Because it's two parts to this, and what was I holding on to? How
Hmm.
did I treat them? And facing up to that, so 4, 5, and 8 and 9, those steps were very very critical in,
Yeah.
in my healing process. So,
Yeah.
man, it's so much more I want. We might have
I
to do a
know. We're
part
just
two,
getting
man.
started, it feels like. Yeah.
We might have to do a part two, man. But I definitely appreciate you coming out. I mean, it was a couple of things I did want to touch on. I just know that, God has definitely shown up in your life, and that's my story. The same thing you were talking about, that I wasn't one of those that God just delivered me and took the taste of alcohol and drugs and the desire to gamble and all of those things away. No, I had to put in work. I had to want this, and not only that, I had to surrender and turn my will over. As we learn, what's that step 2, right?
Step 3. Yeah.
Step 3, turning the will, right? Turning the will over to the care of God,
We
and
understand.
turn our lives over. And that's when it was the beginning of going deeper in that and doing the work. So, I appreciate you, man. Everything that you've done for me, you've been there for me too. And this is the beauty of being on this side now, is
Mhm.
being able to meet brothers like you that have poured into me, that I've seen your journey from afar, some of it close up, but from afar, and to see where God has brought you now, and to
Mhm.
see how the steps following the program. Because basically for me, I broke it down into three simple phases for me,
Mhm.
which involves work each phase, and it's connected to God, which includes finding your purpose and renewing your mind. And then the second one is joining your new family and support group, assembling that
Yes.
and joining them. And then the last thing is just developing and implementing healthy habits and routines and adding them to your life. So
Yes.
you touched on all of those today, and I definitely appreciate you. Have any last words for everybody before we close out? And definitely do a plug for your book again. To
Yeah.
show show
I
that
took
cover of that book, because that book is awesome. Yes.
The Miracle, James LeBlanc. And there are a lot of miracles in this book that you'll see, but the main one was the miracle of forgiveness and releasing resentments. Because for me, that was a miracle because I lived on resentments. And for me to be able to let go of all that mess and just deal with life on life's terms to the best of my ability day to day is truly God's work in this man's life because it has nothing to do with how I would naturally respond to things. So I thank God for um, for everything He's done in my life, for those 12-step rooms to still be there when I crawled back in almost 13 years ago, and for you, man, for you, Malik, you're a great testimony. I remember you from way back, and I'm glad to see that you take a hold of this thing. And those those three steps that you just summarize are it. That's it, man. Thank you for that. Thank you. So important. And like I say, the 12-step model does not have the market cornered on recovery. However you do it, just do it. Just act like a tennis shoe and do it. But it is a day to day. Give yourself a break. Be gentle with yourself because we are so hard on ourselves. Those of us who suffer from this disease of addiction, we are so hard on ourselves. And just remember, when you're giving yourself that self-talk, how would you feel if someone was talking to you like that? Talk to yourself the way you want other people to talk to you, and feed your spirit because that's what's going to win. Whoever you feed is going to win. It's either going to be your spirit or your flesh, and we know what the flesh wants to do. So feed that spirit, and that'll win. I believe that you'll be able to walk out God's purpose for your life because, like I said, there are people who need what only you can give them. So be that vessel.
Yes, sir. Hey, James, thanks again, man. And I really pray that this blesses someone and gives them encouragement and hope and never too far down to turn it around for the miracle,
Yeah.
for God to come to help us through this and to be a miracle. And just like you said, to live out our God-given purpose that only we can do. It's something that only we can do
Mhm.
that can help somebody. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you, James. Keep up the great work, man, and thank you for taking time out. And we'll talk real soon, man.
You know it. Thanks for
Okay,
having
man.
me.
All right. God bless, man. I'll see you soon. All right. All right. Take care.